live. Okay, well, let's get started, everybody. Thanks again. And Francisco, would you mind giving your announcement for Spanish speakers, please, one more time?
Hola, bienvenidos todos a la Junta de Warwick. Si necesitas el canal en español, hay un botón que puedes hacer clic en la aplicación. Ahí si haces clic en interpretación en inglés, ahí puedes escoger el canal de inglés o español. Otra vez hay un botón que dice Interpretation y allí escoge ese botón y ahí dentro escoge español. Gracias.
All right, well, good evening again, everybody. Just to let you know, you've been given a notice on your screen asking you for permission to be recorded. So if you agree to that, please agree so that we can continue. And this broadcast will be recorded, and then Peter, is it also being broadcast on the YouTube channel? Yes, and it is also being broadcast live on the Village YouTube channel right now.
And we'll be available there subsequently. If people want to see the session, weren't able to make it tonight, they'll be able to see it on the YouTube channel.
Right, so if you know anybody who's interested in this topic and isn't available to attend the meeting just after dinner time on a Thursday night in the middle of the week, they can watch this on Sunday morning or any other time they want on the Village YouTube channel. So people can continue to stay informed. And if you can spread the word, that would be great. This evening, I think many of you may know that we have been working on the Warwick Comprehensive Plan update for the last couple months. Peter Fairweather from Fairweather Consulting is the lead prime consultant. Myself, Bill Springnother from Alta Planning and Design. I'm a landscape architect, and I'm focusing my work on bicycle pedestrian access issues, as well as open space, parks and recreation, and vehicular circulation. So we'll be talking about kind of those large, broad topics today. And Peter, would you like to give an introduction for yourself?
Sure, thanks, Bill. Peter Fairweather, I'm with Fairweather Consulting. We do planning, economic development strategies, and strategic planning for communities and not-for-profit organizations. We've been around since 1998 and have done work in the village before, and really enjoy working here and look forward to the discussion tonight. The other thing I'll add is there's a way in which this is the first in what will be a series of outreach efforts regarding the comprehensive plan. Tonight, we're focusing on the issues that Bill talked about: pedestrian, vehicular access, transportation, parks and recreation. But we'll also be talking about other issues in the community as we go forward. And some of them may even be analog, that is face-to-face and in person. And we're really looking forward to it.
We also have with us today Mayor Neward. Mayor, would you like to say a few words?
Yes, thank you, Bill. I'd like to welcome everyone. This is a very important exercise. It really is, if you don't know what a comprehensive master plan is, it's truly a vision statement of our community, our wants, our desires, our innovative thoughts and ideas of where we should go in the next, 5 to 10 years. I just wanted to say one thing. Last night, I was at Memorial Park, which is one of our larger parks. And I think that's where everybody is tonight as well. As I entered the park, I came upon, of course, our skate park, but beyond that, there was a cheerleading contingent and a football team practice and a kickball team practice or game. And there was a little league tournament on the other side. And I was going to a retirement party for one of our beloved firemen. There was so much excitement and use of our park. And it's a coordinated effort by the village to make sure everyone is in the sandbox, plays well, and doesn't, fall onto each other. And so I really applaud my office staff because we get so many requests to use the park in so many different ways throughout the season or seasons. And that was the fruit of their labor and their work. And it was pretty incredible, to the point where I was sitting next to the town supervisor and he was blown away. He was like, I just can't believe you can't fit another thing into this park. This is an amazing environment. So that it made me very proud and excited. But this is what this exercise is all about. It's about looking at the things that we have and seeing how they can progress and become better. What I really love is that it's community based. It's not for the village board to say, oh, this is what we want or this is what we need to do. This comes from the community, comes from our soul and our thoughts, our brains, the committee that was formed will sift through all these ideas and try to find the relevant ones to make this a comprehensive master plan a reality. So thank you for coming this evening. I'll take no more time. Thanks.
Thank you, Mayor. Peter, do you have anything to add?
No, I think we're ready to go forward and let's start the conversation.
All right. So why is a comprehensive plan important? And I think Mayor Newer just touched on several of those principles. It really sets a tone for policy and decision-making for the future. And what goes into a comprehensive plan is not zoning law. It's not guidance, but they are recommendations, and they do provide, again, that long-term future vision that helps the community set priorities. So tonight we're going to be looking at tasks 7, 8, and 9 that came out of the initial scope of work for this project. So the initial scope of work outlined a number of things that Fairweather Consulting is going to be involved with, including housing equity and business development. And scope items 7, 8, and 9, he asked Alta Planning and Design to be involved because of our expertise in bicycle and pedestrian connectivity issues. And task 7 is analyzing parking demand and potential solutions. Task 8 is bicycle pedestrian infrastructure. Task 9 is to analyze existing parks and recreation facilities and identify opportunities to increase connections to them. So to start this process, we first went back and reviewed the 2004 comprehensive plan. So 16 years ago, all this was done. in pretty great detail. And what we're doing now is a update to that 2004 plan. It's not a completely new plan. So what we want to do is check to make sure that some of the priorities and the visions set forth in the 2004 plan are still what the community wants to pursue today. Or if they've been completed, they can be checked off. So in the 2004 plan, you can see there were a number of assets and challenges that were identified. I'm not going to go through the whole list, but what really pops out is that the community felt that the sense of place and the sense of community within Warwick is very important and builds a strong sense of community pride. People are proud of their history. They're proud that the village has a commitment to its residents. They're proud of the quality of life, the walkability, the proximity to New York City, as well as outdoor recreational assets and view sheds, the proximity to local agriculture. All those things build the sense of your community as a strong regional center. It's also a place where people take pride in their downtown and the fact that small businesses can thrive. And also, last but not least, the parks and infrastructure. Now, those may seem like kind of ancillary parts of a community, but as Mayor Neward just described, Veterans Memorial Park right now is probably the beating heart of your community. Everyone's there, right? Tons of things going on, tons of people. In the 2004 plan, the word pedestrians was mentioned 7 times in total. I took a sampling of some of those, and I actually took a little bit of liberty and used a phrase that doesn't include the word pedestrians, but is instead a trail study. Same idea. But you can see here that a lot of the recommendations in the 2004 plan were already looking at the same things that we're looking at today. We're looking at pedestrian improvements, pedestrian amenities, making your community safe and accessible for pedestrians, making it walkable. And accessibility isn't always an issue of handicap accessibility. It's not always an ADA law. It can be accessibility for a diverse group of people. Perhaps it's mothers with strollers, or your neighbor who broke their ankle. They're not handicapped per se, but being able to walk through their community safely is important to everybody. The word parking was mentioned 27 times in the 2004 plan. And often it was referred to as an important asset and as an important piece of the infrastructure, but also one that people wanted to, I would say, focus on by not focusing on, right? How do you do that? Well, you move it to the back of new commercial developments. So it's there, it's available, people use it all the time, but you don't see it. On-street parking is maintained so that commercial establishments along the street can have that curb access. And the village has worked hard to construct and maintain, or in some cases partner with commercial establishments to maintain public parking lots for visitors or for residents who want to park in the downtown. So our first poll question for you: how is Warwick doing? in every community, there's a balance between parking, vehicular circulation on one hand, and pedestrian infrastructure on the other, providing space, large sidewalks, safe crosswalks, providing lots of parking. What's your opinion? You can click on the poll here to offer your opinion, and we'll be able to get very quick and fast feedback from you that can influence what is included in the 2021 update to the comprehensive plan. So what's your opinion? How is Warwick, or how should Warwick address the balance between pedestrian infrastructure and vehicular infrastructure in the future? Click 1 if you think there should be more emphasis on pedestrian infrastructure than there currently is. 2 if you think the balance is correct. You know, as new things develop, they can kind of develop the way the new developments have been happening. There's provisions for both. Or click 3 if you think there should be a stronger emphasis on vehicular parking and circulation. Wait a few minutes while you take a moment to make your selection, and we'll be able to give you the results in just a moment.
And Bill, while people are taking the survey, I can point out if they really enjoy this kind of question and answer, we do have also an online survey of greater detail that you can reach through the project website, which is warwickplan.com. Right on the first page there is a link to the online survey for the comprehensive plan.
All right, so as you can see that from our quick poll, not scientific, but quick, 65%, you can almost say 2/3, you can say 2/3, well, almost 2/3 of the respondents feel that there should be a stronger emphasis on pedestrian infrastructure. Oh, sorry, I got lost in my slides. Why isn't it forwarding? Okay. So in the 2004 plan, there were kind of there were 11 categories for recommendations. For some reason, category 7 was never developed. They skipped 7. Like perhaps it's a bad number or unlucky number in Warwick. So they went from 6 to 8, and it looks like there's 12 categories, but in fact there are 11. And of those 11 recommendation categories, we're going to focus on 3. Number 6 is recommendation for business development. And that section included a great deal of discussion on parking. Section 10 prioritized parks and recreation, the Parks and Recreation Plan. There's a whole couple pages discussing the importance of parks and recreation and how those amenities should be prioritized in the future. And the same for Section 12, Pedestrian Circulation Plan. Time for your next poll. So how is Warwick doing, right? Currently, there is 180 off-street parking spaces, approximately, give or take a few. Parking is encouraged in the rear of new developments, and on-street parking is maintained. But my question to you right now is for you, the residents. We would like to know if there is enough, from your point of view, from your perspective, is there enough off-street parking for the residents? So please select your answer, and we'll again be able to collect this data. And I got a message in the question and answers from Christina asking, why is the chat disabled? The chat is disabled because of because I asked it to be totally honest. And I should have brought this up to you in the beginning. I'm sorry I didn't. If you have any questions, please use the question and answer function. And I encourage questions, but monitoring both the question and answers and the chat is kind of distracting. So if you have questions, as this attendee pointed out, please use the question and answer function, not the chat function. Interesting. So it's a fairly close split. It's almost 50-50, but the majority of you feel that there is not enough off-street parking for residents. Okay. I also want to point out that you can use the hand raising function. I may not get to the question right away. It might, we might get to that question at the end, but feel free to use the hand raising question. So poll question number 3. How often do you feel that visitors are inconvenienced by a difficult parking situation to the point that they are discouraged from returning to your community? Never, rarely, sometimes, often, or always. So there's a couple questions in the question and answer section. Was asked if the Spanish recording is going to be available on YouTube, and we are not yet sure. We are checking on that. Another question is, how many attendants are there? Currently 17. A few moments ago, there were 19. All right, so it looks like the parking situation there is the impression that it does discourage visitors from feeling free to return. Nobody selected that it's so bad that people will just never come back, but 33% said sometimes and 27% said often. So it's, fairly significant number of people feel that parking is a deterrent for out-of-town visitors. All right, so the recommendations that were in the 2004 plan for Parks and Recreation suggested that an evaluation that and recommendations are made for the future of Memorial Park and the Stanley Deming Park. Also, there was a recommendation to assess open space that is located in the town of Warwick, just outside the village line, to develop a development protection plan, basically partnering with the town for that purpose. And the last recommendation was to locate more, I'm sorry, there was a third recommendation to develop the Wewanda Creek corridor into a linear park. And the last recommendation was to find locations suitable for neighborhood parks. The question that I have for you is about Wewanda Creek. There has been a lot of talk about Wewanda Creek, and that it could be a fantastic community asset, that it's hidden, that people have a low impression of it because it's hidden, that it could be a travel corridor for kayakers. It could be turned in, parts of it are wide enough where there could be a pedestrian connection. This research and these suggestions go back, I believe, to there was a plan in 1998 that was suggesting these types of improvements. And our polling question to you now is, what is the current priority for that? There was a concept plan done in the mid 2000s, it's sitting on a shelf. Should this be a low priority or a high priority? How do you feel about transforming Wewanda Creek, sorry, I was mispronouncing it, into a linear park? It's a strong asset for your community. And while you vote, I will read the next question. There were two questions that came in. One's a comment. One is that their aggressive ticketing is a larger turnoff than the difficulty in parking. And then there was another comment about a younger member of the household who states that parking is difficult for local residents in the CVS lot because it is used as a public parking lot. So the village, for those who don't know, and probably most of you do know, the village rents that lot and provides parking in the 2/3 or so of the lot that are closest to Main Street. Just another moment. And again, it's fairly evenly split, but it looks like a slight majority of you feel that Wewanda Creek poses a fantastic development opportunity and should be pursued. So in the chapter in the 2004 plan about pedestrian circulation, the highest priority recommendation was that there should be a comprehensive pedestrian circulation plan. There still is not a comprehensive pedestrian circulation plan. So that still remains as a fairly high priority. They also listed in that plan 5 potential opportunities to create stronger linkages within your community. 3 of those I'm sorry, yeah, 2 of those remain from the analysis we've done so far, remain as high priorities. One of them is at least partially complete. So number 3 in green, the better walkable connection between Bank Street and South Street to the public parking lot and the commercial area on Railroad Avenue has been, to some degree, addressed. Items 2 and 4 remain outstanding, and from what we have heard are they continue to be priorities. And what is not, what you do not see on this map, what I didn't add was an additional line on Forester Avenue itself. That remains a priority as well. Polling question number 5. Is the concept of having a looped or a walking trail which would encircle the village, is that a priority for you? And do you think it's feasible? And the reason I ask this question is because speaking with the steering committee and your local officials, we haven't heard anything about this idea. And I just wonder, is it something that people wish for, but it's, you know, it's not even possible, or people want it and it is possible? So I have 2 questions here. One is an elaboration on neighborhood parks. In the 2004 document, those were described as pocket parks. Usually what they are single family housing lots, or maybe 2, you know, they're small in size, where there is not currently a home. And those are developed as small parks that the community can use, maybe a small playground, some benches, and just a neighborhood asset. Not large recreational parks with soccer fields and baseball fields, but something more suited for families with small kids, or people and dogs, or just people who want to go be outside, but not large recreational parks. And then another comment, that says, there's a report from another member of the household that says it could be a really nice walkway from the parks to the downtown. Now, I believe they're referring to Weweyanda Creek corridor, and that is exactly what has been considered in the past, linking Forester Avenue and Memorial Park to the downtown through that corridor. It's very constrained, so it would be tough, but there has already been a concept plan developed, and be interesting to pursue if that is considered a priority. Galloway Road should be a big priority. I agree. And a safe crosswalk to get from Hawthorne Avenue across Galloway. These sound like safe routes to school projects, if you ask me. Park Avenue Elementary School is right there. So the results are in for our last polling question. Do you feel a loop trail around the village is a priority, or is it even feasible? And the majority of you said it's medium priority, it's possibly feasible. So, and then a fairly large percentage of you, 38%, said it's a high priority and feasible. And a small percentage said that it's a low priority and not feasible. So it looks like something that should be examined further, right? Figure out if it is feasible. Those are the kind of recommendations that go into comprehensive plans. They're very broad. And so the recommendation would be that a feasibility study is pursued. So looking into the future, these are some of the projects that we have seen. And as we develop our recommendations plan and communicate through other outreach activities and through the steering committee, we'll be vetting some of these plans. It sounds to me like some of them are already on your list as well, particularly Galloway. But you can see these green lines represent areas where we feel, based on our initial analysis and the initial feedback we've gotten, pedestrian, essentially sidewalk improvements should be prioritized. So you can see Grand Street, West Street, Colonial Avenue, Forester Avenue, Galloway Road. And then there's an interesting opportunity on Park Street connecting Stanley Deming Park to Veterans Memorial Park, where it's a very large, wide right of way, and turning that into some sort of enhanced pedestrian thoroughfare connecting the two parks could be a fantastic opportunity. Looks like we're getting some more questions in here. Another statement about Galloway and the connection near the elementary school needing improvement. And then there's a question: with so many neighboring towns with rail trails where former tracks have been converted to walking and biking trails, is there any information on the possibility of the rails going through Warwick becoming a rail trail? To my knowledge, they are all active lines still. I'm gonna pose that question to Mayor Newhart, if you wouldn't mind coming off mute and addressing that. I believe they're all active rail lines.
They are, it is, and I think it will remain active. They've put a lot of money into the infrastructure, and there's a lot of businesses actually that depend upon those lines for just locally. Jones Chemical, Kukin Lumber, Midland Lumber, which is out by the former prison. So it's more than just, it's actually an economic piece of our community as well. It would be nice if we had that big rail, trail coming right through our village. I mean, we've also dreamed of connecting to the Appalachian Trail in some form as a loop or a link, and that is another possibility. I just wanted to add one thing to the pedestrian circulation plan, and that is South Street Extension, which leads to a rather large neighborhood and a lot of young people. And they have actually reached out to the village board in hopes that someday there would be a sidewalk system that would lead them to downtown, especially to the park.
Great. Thank you for that. Yeah, the recommendations that you see on this map are not final at all. So, and these are really kind of first impressions. So we are welcoming further input. Speaking of which, we have another person supporting improvements to Hawthorne and Galloway intersection. And another person who is stating that lights and sidewalks, please, thank you. Pedestrian safety is a priority. Another question coming in, connecting Village to the ShopRite area would be great for bikes and walking. I know the goal is for Village improvements, but our kids work at these places, and a safe route would be a tremendous improvement. It's very true. Connecting to the surrounding community and the assets in the surrounding community are an important piece of this as well. So then we took a quick look at the vehicular circulation improvements, and kind of focused on areas where streetscape improvements could be made to reduce the speed and improve the impression that a driver or that people in a car have when they enter the village or leave the village. Basically, making it apparent to somebody coming into the village that they've crossed from the town into the village, and therefore should operate their vehicle under a different set of standards. They should drive more slowly, they should be aware of pedestrians, those types of things. And we found that Colonial Avenue is a very high-speed thoroughfare coming into the village. Same with Maple Avenue and Oakland Avenue. On those three routes coming in, people are traveling at a high speed, and there isn't really a visual cue that that they've made the transition from a more rural area to the village. Some of those cues, or probably the simplest one, is the installation of curbs and sidewalks. So by enhancing the streetscape, you also enhance pedestrian connectivity. When you install that vertical barrier on the side of the road, it immediately gives people the cue that they should be driving at a slower rate of speed. There's two primary intersections that still require focus. The Colonial Avenue, Maple Avenue, Main Street intersection. There has been years of design work done on that. There are engineered plans. It's just a matter of getting the funding to make that project go through. And then the High Street, Main Street intersection, where South Street comes in, that's a little funky also. To my knowledge, there has not been any planning or design study done on those, and or done on that particular intersection, and it still remains one that is confusing and difficult for outsiders to navigate. The last item that you see on this diagram is Park Street. The way I've started to see that, it's not just a street where pedestrian connections could be improved between Veterans Memorial Park and Stanley Deming Park, but also the entire street experience could be improved as a kind of a green street or a bicycle boulevard where the speed limit is very low and it is a place that is welcoming for families and bicycles and kids on skateboards and people walking. Let's see here, we have a few more questions coming in. Yes, safe bikeable or walkable connectivity to grocery stores would be valuable. The sidewalks on South Street need to be improved. Parents can use them for walking with strollers, nor can disabled people. I believe that person probably intended to say parents can't use them for walking with strollers, nor can disabled people. There's another vote for the Galloway-Hawthorne intersection, as well as South Street extension to connect those neighborhoods more safely to the village, but also sidewalk added to South Street, starting from Galloway. Right. Question is the speed of vehicles coming from Route 17A not considered an issue? And it hasn't, no one has, so this study is not a quantitative study. We're not going out there and measuring speeds. From our questioning, from our from the input we've gotten from your community leaders and from the steering committee, that is not considered a high speed route. And my guess is that because of the curves in the road, traffic starts to slow down. That is one I've been curious about looking at more detail at. And I think if Galloway Road is improved between Forester and Oakland, that will provide that visual cue that people are entering a village and need to hit the brakes. Another comment, the road connection from Memorial Park to Stanley Deming is a problem. The road itself has parking on both sides, making two-way traffic difficult. This is an accident-prone roadway. A pedestrian walkway would be difficult if it impacts the roadway. From our understanding, the apartment units that front onto that street all have parking, adequate parking for them in the lots behind the apartment buildings. And obviously, it's something that there would need to be further discussion and community buy-in. But what's been suggested so far is that on-street parking is removed because the residents who live there have parking provided for them in parking lots. There's somebody who would like to go back to the focus on the future slide regarding vehicular and pedestrian circulation improvements into the village from Maple, Colonial, and Oakland. For example, curbs, sidewalks, and lampposts. Okay. We are there. So it sounds like there's an additional person who says, that's true, laugh out loud. The ditch on South Street is ridiculous, as are the broken up sidewalks and lack on South Street extension. So the South Street and South Street extension corridor sounds like it needs some pedestrian improvements in a significant way. So thank you for that input. Great. So our last question for you is kind of regarding implementation. The current policy within the village is that property owners, adjacent property owners are responsible for construction and maintenance of sidewalks. However, that is difficult to enforce, poses a political problem for anybody who wants to enforce that and make homeowners pay for sidewalks. In new developments, it's easier. You can hold up site plan approval being contingent upon sidewalk development, but in old existing single family home neighborhoods, it's very difficult. There's kind of three solutions. One is to enforce the sidewalk policy, which is politically difficult. Second thing is to publicly fund sidewalk development, whether through grant process or through taxes. That can be a slow process and requires, and if you do grants, it requires the grants to be awarded. And the third potential option is to tie the cost of sidewalk development to the tax bill and spread it out over a 20 or 30-year period so that it's tied to the property and not the property owner. For instance, if it costs $4,000 to build sidewalks in front of your home, you may not want to spend $4,000 to do that. But if that money, or if that $4,000 is split up over the course of 20 years, and you sell the property after 5 years, you personally don't have to pay for that sidewalk development. So the question is, of these three options listed above for improving the pedestrian connectivity within the village, just pick one. Which one do you think is the most viable solution to building more sidewalks in your community where they don't exist? And while you're doing that, I'll go through a few more questions. There are existing sidewalks along Park Lane Apartments. I am confused as to why the street parking would need to be removed. There are just more sidewalks needed along where Wadson's Home Center is. Okay. So if we're only looking at pedestrian traffic, that's a solution. If we're looking at making a park-like experience between Veterans Memorial Park and Stanley Deming Park, which has been suggested by the steering committee, transforming that street into something more than a street with parallel parking on both sides is a potential solution for making that connection between the two parks. Question about my crazy suggestion. Paying for sidewalks through taxes, and they say, huh? We don't already pay through our taxes? Question mark. Good to know. Thank you for clarifying. So apparently, actually, that person was stating that they thought the sidewalk program would be paid for through their current taxes, and it's not. With the third option, when does the side get built? And I think the side might be the curb, perhaps. No. When does the sidewalk get built? There's a clarification. I'm sorry. With a third option, when does the sidewalk get built? That would be dependent on how the city or how the village council would move with that. I mean, they would have to change current zoning law in order to make it happen. Question is, do we have impact fees in Warwick? Perhaps new development could help fund pedestrian safety actions like sidewalks if the development is going to increase traffic. It's a good idea. Another person says, thanks for clarifying, responding to the tax discussion. And another person asked, do you have to wait 30 years? No, I'm sorry if I gave that impression. No, the idea is the sidewalks would be built and then the fee for that would be spread out over a period of time. It's kind of like a mortgage, right? You spread it out over a period of time. So it's a small increment each year. So of the respondents, 0% of you think that enforcing the current sidewalk policy is politically viable or a good alternative. 33% of you think pursuing grant funding and public funding for sidewalks is the way to go. And 67% of you think that the village should look harder at alternative ways of paying for sidewalk development. All right. So we've been answering questions throughout, but we're going to open it up now for the full question and answer period. If you have any questions, you can type them into the question and answer bar or use the hand raise function. And I want to again apologize for having the chat closed to you. I hope everyone was able to make their comments known with the system that we are using. So if you have any more questions, please feel free to ask. Peter, do you have any additional comments?
Well, first, just let me thank the folks that have participated so far. I think we've learned a lot in terms of what's happening in the village and people's thoughts about it. Like the connections to the ShopRite Plaza in terms of helping people, especially young people that have jobs there. That's something that I hadn't focused in on before, and I think that was very helpful. Secondly, just another reminder that this is kind of the first part of the conversation. We'll be holding other sessions, and again, as I said before, hopefully in person if conditions allow, on other topics. And in the meantime, there is also a survey, online survey available at the website warwickplan.com. So, continue to participate in those venues. And again, this is the sort of the beginning of the conversation. And again, I'm very appreciative of the insights that have been shared tonight. It's been very helpful.
I also want to let you know that behind the scenes here, we have 3 additional people who you may not see. Diego Aria is translating. He's our Spanish translator. And we have 2 IT people, Robert Gibson and Francisco, who are running kind of the whole background and also protecting us from hacks right now. And Francisco let me know that if you have a question and you would like to speak, he can unmute you if you raise your hand. So if you have a question or have a comment that you would like to make, we can do that. We have a small enough group here that we can offer that today. So if you have a comment or a question that we haven't been able to get to, or if you want to say something that you just don't feel like using the question and answer function, feel free to raise your hand and we will be able to take you off mute and let you speak. Oh, Few more questions coming in here. Any discussion on relacing? I don't know what relacing is. Does anybody know what that is?
Yeah, actually, that's the question is corrected a little later on. It says any discussion on replacing the aging iron water
Oh,
pipe.
okay, yeah. I believe there will be discussion and consideration of other topics such as infrastructure in future sessions. Is that true, Peter?
Yeah.
Question, do residents, for example, on South Street own the property where the sidewalk will be built? I don't know where the property lines end. Typically, a road has a right-of-way that extends beyond the edge of pavement. There is usually a town or village standard for that. And in most cases, the sidewalk can be built within that right-of-way. But I'm not sure what the right-of-way width is on South Street. Mayor, do you happen to know?
Well, the property is owned by the landowner, the resident, to the curb. That's basically the practice. If there's no curb, it, you know, in essence, to the street where the street begins. And there is a right of way. I believe it's 15 or 20 feet.
Okay. Will efforts at community outreach be bolstered for future meetings, given the small amount of attendance tonight? What are the ways in which those of us might participate, aid in this effort? Peter, can I direct that to you?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I think the more help we can get with that, the better. You can probably the best thing to do would be to reach me directly. And I can give you my email address, but even the simpler thing, just go to warwickplan.com, go to the contact page, and the email that you send through that form comes directly to me. But my email address, you can send it to peter@fairweatherconsulting.com, and would be very interested in your suggestions. Again, the more we can do to get as much community input as possible, the better. So be happy to welcome your participation in that effort.
So I added both of those, warwickplan.com and peter@fairweatherconsulting.com. So you can write those down. We have one more question, and I'm going to consider this the last question since we're, oh no, we have two more questions. How do we know how many parking spots we need to add or how many side street parking spots we need? That is a good question. In order to make that determination, there needs to be an in-depth quantitative analysis of the current supply and demand, and there has to be an accounting of how many people need parking and how many parking spots are available. Now, the side street parking spots, it's hard to add those, right? Unless you build more streets, because there's only so much linear feet. So there are only so many linear feet in a roadway or on a block. So if you have a 200-foot block, you can really only expect to get about maximum 10 cars on that block. And that's parked very tightly. Next question is, I understand that development of proposed changes will take significant time, but what might be the anticipated timeline for the village to act on any of these topics? Well, I want to state again that a comprehensive plan is a long-term vision for the community. It's a guidance document that provides the priorities and vision for decision-making in the future. what is recommended in here, what is recommended in a comprehensive plan is not a, it's not a design, it's not a policy recommendation. They're recommendations for the community to act. So with that being stated, I would like to ask Mayor Newhart to comment on that topic of what's the anticipated timeline for the village to act on any of these topics?
That's, I think, a very valid and important question. And Bill, as you point out, this is a vision document. I really feel the importance of this document is the inclusion of as much of that vision as possible, with as many potential projects as possible, because when it comes down to it, this document is used to form the future of the community. So when a developer comes into this community and wants to develop a piece of open space, or take an existing neighborhood and redefine it, let's say, that's where, when we look at this document particularly, or in another situation, if we are looking for funding, if we are looking for a grant, if what we're working towards, or what the grant is about, is spotlighted or named in our comprehensive master plan, that gives us, really some credibility as to this is what the community wants. This is what the community is looking for. Things are very expensive, as we all know. Right now, we're in the midst of a $12 million rehab of our wastewater treatment plant. We had to raise taxes a number of years ago, very dramatically, because that's a big chunk of change for a village our size. But at the same time, that shouldn't make us fearful that we can't do some of these other projects, whether it's through state funding, federal funding, and or through bonding and having it, be paid for the long haul. So for every thing that we propose, I believe there is a creative solution. And so I think that we shouldn't be afraid to, to put in this document things that, that may cost a lot, but maybe we will find that money. The state of New York has a, what is it, a $9 million Main Street renovation, grant. And there are other funds out there that may be available. And so we have to think like that, to think that, well, in essence, there hopefully will be a time when all the stars align. So I hope that answers to some degree. It's a juggling act, I can tell you, in terms of prioritizing and finding the money and making things happen. Some things happen through community efforts, such as the playground in Stanley Deming Park, which was a community-built playground.
Yeah, and the other thing I'll add is, when we do the comprehensive plan, at the end, there will be like a 3 to 5 year implementation recommendations, which will be, here are the projects and the potential sequence for them. But as the mayor pointed out, a lot of that is subject to funding availability. But what we try to do is provide guidance for, here are the first steps, here are the things you do the first year, here are the things you can do in the second year, and usually out to the 5th year. So that there will be a sense of sequential actions that can be taken. But, it's all up to the availability of funding and how that works.
Great. Well, thank you. And there was one more comment that came in, and it's something that I think actually should be considered fairly strongly. And the comment is it possible that we don't have a parking issue, just a parking signage issue? And when I was responding to the previous questioner who asked how we figure out how many parking spaces are needed. That's part of it. You don't go in and just start building parking lots. You need to figure out what the problem is, and if there is a problem, or if the problem is just people don't know where to park. So thank you for making that comment. And with that, I want to thank you all for attending this evening, and thank you for your comments and questions. I hope you're able to attend the future meetings and provide input as this project develops. It's kind of still in its infancy. We're just getting it rolling, and this is the first of several opportunities for public input. So thank you.
And don't forget, you can also take the online survey going to warwickplan.com, and we look forward to hearing from you.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone, for participating.
Yes, thank you all. See you around town.